Hey humans, little Jacob here. So, somewhere around 2003, 2004, what was kind of like the beginning of internet use for me, near the beginning, I wrote an essay, pretty much only published on the forum, so, just a posting about the 3 ways that police increase crime in society. Which I thought demonstrated how they increase crime. Say what you will about how they decrease crime, if you think they decrease crime. It didn't take me long before I came up with a 4th way. And then after some time, I realized the 5th way that they increase crime in society. And then just this year, back in April 2025, more than 20 years after the original essay, I realized the 6th way that police increase crime in society. What are these ways, you must be asking? Well, the one I always like to start with is monopoly on violence, or monopoly on anything. I'm not going to stop and flesh each one of these out right here and now, although I will do a video on that. This is pretty much just to enumerate them. I think a lot of people can understand how a violence or a monopoly on anything will cause a decrease in service and choice. At any rate, the second one is institutionalization. How their policies and their practices of putting people into institutions, and this mass incarceration leads to all kinds of policies trying to deal with large numbers of people being held against their will. Got to do all kinds of crazy shit. And that increases crime, I think, from those individuals when you institutionalize them. Brighter people than me, I'm sure, have already covered that topic. And again, I'm not going to flesh each one out fully. The third one is the war on drugs. That one has always been obvious to me for a long time, that their policies increase crime. I don't know where it stands in 2025, but at one time it was estimated that 50 to 80% of the murders in America are drug related. A lot of it is taking out competition or desperate people doing desperate things to get their fix because of artificially inflated prices, because of its black market. It's a lucrative black market. So they create this violent, lucrative black market with their policies, and that increases crime. People who are addicted to alcohol don't have to go rob people usually. They can buy their stuff affordably at stores. Other people have to pay exorbitant street prices to get their fix. And that leads to them doing all kinds of ridiculous things, desperate things, to get money. And so the war on drugs in so many ways, in and itself is a crime. This whole, we get to decide what and you do and don't consume. I'm a victim of that war on drugs. I wanted to come up with a green heart patch for us victims of the war on drugs. Those of us who've been through it and made it to the other side. Yeah, I have 2 felonies for cannabis in a state where it's now legal. And had those been misdemeanors, they would have wiped them, but they weren't. So they still stand. I will have to get them expunged the old-fashioned way. Okay, so number 3 was the war on drugs, increasing crime. The police causing that increase. Guys, I just love all these mushrooms. Yeah. I took some photos yesterday, but today they are even bigger and better and more of them. But yeah, if you like, you should come out to Sumac sometime. And even the moss is great. I don't know why I'm putting this camera on my face. I hate to say it was because of request, but it was. At any rate, The fourth way that police increase crime in society. Let's see. Sometimes I lose track. Oh yeah, the one I came up with back then was how they stop victims' justice. Once the police decide they're going to take care of a perpetrator of an alleged crime, the victim is actually, barred or banned from doing anything about it. The people in the community, they can't do anything. This is the one way. And I fleshed this out in my article with like real world examples, which I'm not going to take the time for now. But yeah, I think that their artificial system of justice fails so much that it actually causes an increase in crime. It doesn't have the effect of preventing crime, it increases it. But yeah. Number 5 is the impunity that police officers, and I'm sure other people, judges, probation officers, jailers, even like these clerks and dispatch, everyone associated with that has a sense of impunity. And so you see quite high levels of domestic violence by officers. And in some of the reports they hear, I'm the police, you're calling my friends. No, they're not going to do anything about it. They tell that to their kids when they're abusing them. I am the cops, you can't call them. They're not going to come. And in some case, like in my town, there's only one cop. Yeah. And the county, yeah, you think they give a rat's ass? Only as much as it is protecting them. There's a lot of spots that looks like the deer bed down right out in here. Probably is a nice spot for them. They can get up and get out. So yeah, the impunity that comes with that pretense of power. I call it pretense of power because it doesn't really exist. They don't have power because you can't give them power. The public can't give them power. If you have no say over my life, how can you go into a voting booth and pretend to give that say over to somebody else? This is all pretend. We all got to go along with it. And we do because they use violence to enforce it. And then it's just like easier to pretend like, oh, hey, we're just going along with it. Not like they have their boot on our necks and are making us go along with it. They take our children out of the cradle and stick them into their funded schools and be like, hey, oh no, you guys are going along with this voluntarily. Hey, let's make the government that we set up for our benefit a religion, and we'll like worship it and make like all kinds of like obeisance to it, and we'll do little rituals and things like that. Oh, you know how you primates like ritual. At any rate, so they have that impunity where they commit crimes. A real world example, my friend Jim, rest in peace, he was walking across the bridge in Streator, Illinois one night, and he could see down to the grocery store, and he saw a squad car there, and that got his attention. He was watching them. And it was 2 police officers loading the trunk of the squad car with bags of charcoal from a pallet that was in front of the store. They're supposed to be the ones guarding that stuff. That's the reason that store owners feel like, hey, I could probably leave some of this out at night, is because there's police on patrol. Yeah, unless they're the ones stealing it. Well, my friend, he thought, oh, well, I need to go and tell the chief of police about this because he needs to know that he's got a couple of bad apples and, he can take care of this because this is important for the community and trust, etc. Yeah, you're laughing too, aren't you? You can guess how that went. Oh yeah, he took him into his office and told Jim, you didn't see what you saw. That's what he told him. You didn't see what you saw. What you say you saw. You didn't see that. So that's the kind of impunity. Another real world example. Guy who arrested me recently on a warrant wanted to get his first name. Turns out he had called his wife or ex-wife like 80-some times in 4 hours. Said things like, the police, you'll be dead by the time the police get there. That kind of impunity, he knows. And you know what? He did it the second time. I think that time they charged him with some like citation. And said it didn't rise to the level of a crime. That's what, I have to go back and read the article. But the second time they decided it didn't rise to the level of a crime. I think they maybe said the first time that they just issued him a citation. No, they piloted on deep, because I didn't call a private party and be like, hey, you'll be dead, and make like threats. I called the police and redressed my grievances, and man, they just can't handle that shit. Like, that's just a bit too much for them. Like, they know which way the power goes, and it's supposed to go top down. At any rate, number 6, I got to learn, I knew there was something wrong with all of this. Officer safety, but officer safety is the 6th way that I've realized that police increase crime in society. And I realized that while I was curled up naked, no uniform, no blanket, no nothing, in Monroe County, Wisconsin jail in their rubber room. They had me in the rubber room. Read the reports. Have them explain to you why I was in there. And they brought me breakfast. In the jail, I was curled up in the corner, furthest corner from the door. Curled up back to the door. And this young jailer starts barking at me to stand up and get up against the wall, so he can give me the breakfast tray. Now, never mind, there are these little doors that fit trays, and he could have slid it through. There's one at like a mid-level, and then there's one at like a lower level. And that's for sliding the tray through, but it's also for like putting leg irons on. You got to stand up there and have them put the leg irons on through the door. Those kind of indignities. So he could have slipped it through the tray door while I'm curled up. He could have just done what he was going to do, and that's open the door and put it on the floor. That's why he wanted me to stand up, which would have put me in a much better position to rush him had I decided to do so. And I told him, I said, you have to provide me with breakfast. And he kept telling me, stand up and get against the wall. Well, I didn't want to get up. I had been up all night giving them a concert, and then was finally getting some rest, but having a hard time of it, sleeping naked on a hard, cold rubber floor. This isn't like rubber, like cushy rubber. This is like shoe sole rubber, like hard, unyielding. But, and finally he said, it's for officer safety. Can't remember if Monroe County has body cams on their jailers, but it would be interesting to go back and see that. And then he takes the breakfast. He doesn't leave it. He does not provide me with breakfast like the law says he has to. And he's going to say, that's because of officer safety. I was afraid he might crawl across the floor, stand up and rush across the floor, which would take more time. If he wanted me in a position that was inopportune to rush him, curled up with my back to him in the furthest corner, that's pretty good. At the least I'm going to have to roll over, stand up before I rush him. No, he wants me in a position where I am standing on my feet facing the wall, where all I got to do is push off with my arms, spring with my arms, spin in motion, and I'd be on his ass. Like, that's how easy that would go. But it wasn't about a fucking officer safety, and we all know that. It was about officer control, and they were still trying to break me in there. Yeah, that's what all they were trying to do, was break me. They got the warning from from Vernon County, and they saw the way I fucking dressed down Roy Boy Torgerson when he thought he'd show up and stand in front of me in my cell. Sorry, I forgot the camera was facing my face. Thought I was videotaping the first floor. At any rate, so those are the 6 ways. Monopoly of violence, institutionalization, war on drugs, prevention of victims' justice, officer impunity, I should say, authorities impunity. When they have a claim authority, then they think they have impunity and they can get away with more crimes than they try. And they do. And then officer safety, where now they're going to kill people, take away their state-sanctioned breakfast while they're in jail. All these stupid little things, and just throw it all on, officer safety, I got to be safe. See, what it goes to show is they will not and do not put themselves in harm's way. They will kill you before they put themselves in harm's way. Before they do anything that resembles putting themselves in harm's way, they will kill you. And we have example after example after example. And if those aren't enough for you, I got one word for you. Uvalde.